In this video, we're going to look at simplifying expressions using rational exponents. And the first thing I want you to be aware of is just remember your exponent rules. So the first rule we're going to remember is raising a power to a power for this first expression. When you raise a power to a power, you multiply the two powers together. But we're not going to do that at the very beginning because we're going to look inside those parentheses and see that the 9 is by itself. So we need to raise the 9 to the negative 3/2 power all by itself. Then we're going to take the x and we're going to raise that to the negative 3/2 power by multiplying. I'm going to write that out as two fractions because I am going to multiply the two fractions by hand. So we've got 9 raised to the negative 3/2 power times x raised to the 4/1 times negative 3/2. Then we're going to deal with the 9 first, so we're going to think about that in terms of it being raised to a negative power, and when something's raised to a negative power, I need to put a 1 over it and raise it to the positive, so that's going to be 1 over 9 to the 3/2. Now let's look back at the x. We want to multiply the fractions, and looking at the diagonals, I see that the 4 and the 2 can be reduced to 2/1, and then all I have to do is multiply the 2 times the negative 3. So that gives me an x to the negative 6 power. The next thing I'm going to do is try to figure out what to do with that 9 to the 3/2 on the bottom there. And the new rule that we've learned is when something is raised to a fraction, you can take the two numbers off the fraction and put them on a radical. So that's going to become 1 over the square root of 9 to the 3rd. We didn't have to do the 2 in the square root spot, but I just put it there just to show you where that's going. The x to the negative 6 we're going to treat the same way as the raised to the negative power. We're going to put that 1 over x to the positive 6. Now we're going to try to simplify that radical, and I just think of this as there's square root of 9 3 times, and so you take the square root of 9 is 3, so that's going to be 3 times 3 times 3, which is going to be 27. So the first fraction is going to reduce to 1 over 27. And then the x to the 6 is going to stay on the bottom with the 27, and that's going to be our final answer, 1 over 27 x to the 6th. And we have simplified it, and we used rational exponents the whole way. The only thing that we did with the 9 was we changed that to a radical so that we could simplify that a little bit more. Okay, the second expression, notice you've got 3 terms that you're multiplying together, and I'm going to ask you to remember another exponent rule. The rule where you're multiplying 2 terms with the same base, you're going to add those exponents. So we're going to do that with this problem. And don't forget the 8 and the 3 are kind of on their own, so we're going to write those out front. I'm going to rearrange this just a little bit. I've got the 8 times the 3, because I'm going to multiply those together. And then I've got the x to the negative 1, that used to be with the 8. I've got the x, that used to be with the 3. I put a 1 on that. And then at the very end, I've got x raised to the negative 1/2 power. So we're going to multiply the 8 and the 3. And we're going to add the exponents on the x's. So 8 times 3 is 24, and I'm setting this up to add negative 1 plus 1 minus 1/2. Well, what's nice about this is the negative 1 plus 1 zeroes out. I'm just left with x raised to the negative 1/2 power. So I've got 24 times x raised to the negative 1/2 power. And we're going to think of that as the 1 over positive again. So we're going to do 24 over the x to the 1/2, because the 24 doesn't have to go underneath, just the x does, just the x raised to the 1/2. And that, because we are working with rational exponents, is our final answer on this problem. We don't want to change back to a radical if the problem is asking us to use rational exponents.